Thank you so much, Ihani. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for taking an hour out of your day to join me here on the webinar. I can't think of a more important time in my professional lifetime and probably all of our professional lifetimes to be doing strategic planning than right now. So I really appreciate you guys doing that. A little bit about me and Law Firm Success Group. I am the business development and marketing advisor for Hoag Fenton, which is a 3-office law firm headquartered and based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm also the author of a book called Staffing Up, which is the first book that teaches attorneys how to hire and staff up their law firms. I have a podcast as well. The details are there. And I spent about 17 years in Silicon Valley before I jumped in and started working with attorneys. So a lot of things we're going to be talking about today are going to be best practices that are outside typically of the field of law, but they've been customized and tuned up so they're a great fit for law firms. I really want to thank CEB for having me here today, as well as all of you for providing your attention. We're going to be going really fast today. And so just take the best notes you can, but don't worry if you don't get all of it, because this is being recorded. Ask questions. I really want you to use the chat box, use the Q&A box, and engage in the exercises that we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to ask you right now, this is your one warning. Make sure you have a pen or pencil and a pad of paper, because you're going to need it today. This is not one of the webinars where you just sit back and you listen. You're actually going to do some exercises. So make sure you can engage with that. You have maybe a glass of water handy, that your phones are set to stun, and that you're ready to go and get the very most out of today. And yes, Yvette, thank you for your question. The slides will be available after the webinar. They'll be sent out to all the attendees. So ask questions, dig deep, and you're gonna have to get really comfortable with the chat box and the Q&A box. And so I'm just gonna jump in. Let's get started right now. For those of you that are on the webinar, go ahead and just type in the chat box what city you're in right now. You guys are fast. Very cool. Whoa. Okay. Let's see if I can keep up with this. So Maria is from Marina Del Rey. Welcome. Patrick from Henderson, Nevada. Terrific. Jamie from San Leandro. Welcome. Mikak from San Diego. Love San Diego. Welcome. Sharon from Lakeport. We've got Santa Barbara, Beverly Hills. Allison from Sacramento. San Rafael, Valencia. Terrific. Boy, everyone, thank you for joining today. And we've got someone from Boogie Town and Sherry from Fairfield. So welcome, everyone. Let's go ahead and get going. So my firm, the Law Firm Success Group, we're experts when it comes to helping attorneys reach that next level. It's more income, more time off, less stress, really helping them build their perfect practice. And this is our manifesto. So it's what all of our clients believe. And I want you to be in this mindset today for this webinar. Be all in, be really engaged on the chat, and be ready to get that one powerful aha moment that you need for your practice. That should be your goal for today. And so with that, here's what we're going to cover. We're going to dig into the overview of the one-page strategic plan, what that whole framework looks like. We're going to talk about how to use it. So after this webinar, you can finish it off and put it into practice for yourself and your firm, not just this year, but year over year over year. And we're going to get a start here today. We're going to focus on 3 aspects of the strategic plan. We're going to talk about the values of your firm, the vision you have for your firm, and your unique value proposition or unique selling proposition. It's really the same thing. So we're going to cover those 3 things. You're going to apply those 3 things to your one-page strategic plan today. And then as we wrap things up, we'll talk a little bit about next steps, how you can finish off your one-page strategic plan. And we are going to leave some time for questions, but please don't wait to ask questions until the end. Let's go ahead and take questions as we go, because if you have a question, someone else is going to have the same question, and that can really help everyone complete the exercises as we move through this. So please ask all the questions that you possibly can, and jump in and use the chat. And so the first question actually is going to be for all of you, and that's around strategic planning. What do you find most challenging about strategic planning? As you're thinking through that, I'm just going to talk a little bit, but don't wait for me to finish. Just type it in the chat box. What do you find challenging about strategic planning? And I'm going to tell you a little story while you're thinking through that. I worked for Siemens Healthcare and ran a $100 million business for Siemens Healthcare. And we used to do strategic planning. No kidding, it would take us 3 months. 3 months. We did it all in PowerPoint. There were supporting Excel financial models. The PowerPoint deck by itself was over 70 slides. I mean, it was a full-time crazy effort to put this thing together. And the reason for that is it was a global, $100 million organization. It was big. And so it's hard to turn something like that. If you're trying to make even small changes, it takes a lot of planning and effort. Most of you are probably not in that situation. And so I'm hoping that actually today, you can just do the one pager and you are going to come away with a terrific strategic plan that you can put into place for your firm. And so thanks. We're getting some awesome responses here in the chat. Alex says, getting partners at my firm to participate in it. Yes, it's really challenging because oftentimes it's not one conversation, it's a long series of conversations and it takes a long time, et cetera, et cetera. So we want something simple that everyone can engage in, get some results out of, and boom, they can go start to execute. Aaron says, taking the time to sit down and actually do it. Okay, well, we're going to actually make some headway today, Aaron. So make some progress there. Patrick, same thing, making time for it. Okay, awesome. Mikak says, I'm not sure what to include. Okay, well, you're going to leave today knowing what to include. Maria says, unpredictability of cash flow. So that, Maria, there is a weakness that you can build into your strategic plan and then and build a mitigation around that. Teresa says, not sure where to start. Well, we're going to get started today. Jennifer says, specific goals instead of like the general generic goals. Terrific. So Jennifer, it might take you a couple of iterations today, but we'll get you started on that. And then it's going to be up to you to really drill down into those specific goals that are going to make a difference. But we're going to back into those goals as well. So hopefully you'll get started further along this time than you have in the past. I think of Mike Tyson's famous quote, everyone's got a plan until they get smashed in the face. I love that quote. So I make a plan to get to the office, ready to implement the plan, and then the emergency surprise, etc., derail the plan. Yes, and gosh, I can't think of a better situation as an example, apart from Mike Tyson's fights, than what we're in today. If people had detailed strategic plans, a lot of those plans got upended with the pandemic and everything that came out of that, and then the fires throughout California. It was just one thing after the other after the other. And so a lot of strategic plans got torn up over the course of this year. That's a great point. Yvette says, narrowing down the best marketing options. Okay. We're not going to spend a lot of time digging into marketing today, Yvette, but hopefully as a result of the exercises we go through today, you'll have some more insight into that. This is terrific, everyone. And this is very consistent with what I've heard from other attorneys. But the thing is, strategic planning doesn't have to be that way. In my mind, for the kinds of businesses we have, strategic planning should be a quick and easy process, not a long, drawn-out slog. It's got to be really effective. It's got to be really efficient, and it needs to have the right level of detail. So if you get into too much detail, the problem with that is it's very hard to incorporate changes. And any strategic plan that's put together needs to be flexible so it can incorporate twists and turns that you're likely to encounter over the course of the year. And again, no better example than it is today. So the strategic plan I put together for my firm is still intact. The strategic plan that my clients have put together for their firms are still intact. In spite of everything else that has happened, our plans were at the right level. So even though we had to make changes and tweaks into how we went about things, the plan itself still remained intact. We're still headed in the same direction, and we're still focused on a lot of the same things. So it should be really fast. It should also provide you clarity or insight into your law firm so that you can focus on what's truly important. We are getting bombarded with all sorts of information and articles and podcasts and blogs and people speaking to us and all sorts of input coming at us about what we should be doing and about what's really important. But we oftentimes, we don't have the framework to figure out for ourselves, okay, where should I be focused? What's the best use of my time? What are the vital few things I need to focus on that are really going to make a difference in my law firm? And that's what you should get out of strategic planning, is that level of clarity. That way you are propelling yourself and your firm forward towards a destination that you want, as opposed to just, kind of living day to day and working day to day. The ultimate goal of strategic planning really is to enable you to take luck mostly out of the equation, so that your business success isn't necessarily dependent upon luck. Instead, you take control of your firm and you take control of your future. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So the one-page strategic plan, what does it look like? So when I do these, normally it's in a room, right? Pre-COVID, in a room with, 20, 30, however many people in the room, and we're going through this. And so they open up the workbooks and there it is. So I'm going to show this to you here on your screen right now, the one-page strategic plan. And there it is. I know it's beautiful. It's a work of art. But it is just one page, and it's the back side of it is blank. So everything you need is on this one side of this one page. Don't feel like you've got to read it. I'm going to look at specific sections here in a bit. But the one thing I wanted to point out, and you may see this already, you might be thinking, this is a strategic plan for my firm? How is that possible? The spaces are so small. There's just not a lot of room to write anything. And as it turns out, the spaces are small for a specific reason. It's not just to get it all to fit onto one page. This plan is not going to be super detailed. And the reason for that is that details are not strategy. Details are about implementation. And details can and will change over the course of the year, but your strategy will not. Important to remember, details can and will change. Your strategy will not. And so for that reason, all we need are small spaces for this. So let's take a look at the top part of the one-page strategic plan. And this is going to be where we're going to focus today. This is where I start with my clients. This is where you should start as you're thinking through this. We're going to focus on just the three things: values, vision, and something called UVP, which stands for unique value proposition. That's going to be our focus. And my goal for today is for you to leave this webinar with those three things, 80 to 90% done for your law firm. Because once you get those things, the rest flows pretty easily from it. The rest of the plan, let me share that with you here real quick so you can see what the rest of this looks like too. And then at the end of the webinar today, I'll show you how to get a video tutorial for the rest of this. I thought about trying to cover all of this in a 1-hour webinar, and it just wasn't going to happen. So we focused on the three places to start. And then at the end, I'll show you where you can get a video to catch the rest of this. And here's what they are. So we've got strengths, which are the strengths that your law firm has, which is inherent in your firm. But all the way on the other side and at the bottom, we have weaknesses. Weaknesses are weaknesses of your firm that are also inherent in your firm. We've got opportunities to seize. What are some of the really awesome growth opportunities that you think to yourself, man, if I only had the time or the money and it could do this, whatever this happens to be, it would really take my firm to the next level. Those are opportunities. And then we have threats. Threats are things outside your firm that could threaten the existence of your firm. An example could be, oh, I don't know, not that anyone could have, but by the way, none of my clients put this in their strategic plan, but the court shutting down because of a global pandemic, okay? That is a threat that I don't think anyone had in their strategic plans, but is something that people should be incorporating now as you're doing your strategic plan for 2021, because that is definitely a threat, right? So these are things that are external to the firm. They may or they may not be in your control. Whether they're in your control or not, you might be able to mitigate them, and that's why we put them in the strategic plan. The fifth piece is your goal. So once you've thought through your strengths and you've thought through your opportunities, threats, weaknesses, now you're in a position to actually figure out your goals. And there's only room for three. The reason there's only room for three is that if you just accomplish the three top goals for your business, you'll be much further along than if you have 5 or 6 of them Because if you have 5 or 6 strong goals with small firms, it's very hard to do and very hard to do well. So better off just keeping it simple and focusing on 1, 2, or 3 things. And this format is called the SWOT analysis format. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a terrific strategic planning tool that we use. Once you have the goals, you have to measure progress towards those goals, and that's where metrics come in. So 1 metric per goal, and the exact metric will depend upon the exact goal. So that's the bottom 2/3 of the strategic plan. We're not going to get into we're not going to get into this today. Instead, we're going to focus right here, which is your vision, your values, and your UVP. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to start with values. And the reason, I start with values is because the values are your firm's DNA. Now, you may not be able to necessarily write out your firm's values today. That's part of the exercise that we're doing. But whether you've written them down or not, you have them. They're in your firm. And if you don't know what they are, you've got to identify it. If you've identified them already, please, please, please make sure that you are living them. No one wants to be the firm that says they take great care of their employees as part of their values, on a plaque somewhere, but they don't actually do that. So it's important to be honest. It's important to really live those values that you say you're living, because values set the tone. They set the tone for the culture that you have in your firm. Even if you're a solo attorney, your values are still important because they set the tone for your vendors that you work with. It sets the tone for your clients and what they should expect from you, and the kinds of clients, by the way, that you want to work with. It also sets the tone for hiring and growth, the kinds of people you want to bring in. It sets the tone for your marketing. How do you want to brand your firm? How do you want to market your firm? Where do you want to be seen, and where do you want to build your brand? And of course, your clients, it's no surprise, your clients are going to appreciate your values, whatever those happen to be. And those values are going to attract certain clients. And so the more honest you can be with yourself about those values, and yes, it is possible to change them if you don't like them, but it's a good starting point. And so what we're going to do here, and this is where you want to break out your pen and paper here. I've got some sample values here on the screen. I'm not going to read all of these to you, but typically when we do values, we go through a long list of values. This is a partial list, and clients can either choose from this list or they can come up with their own. And as you're looking at this list, you might see some that are in bold. And the reason they're in bold is those are the values that our firm has. So we believe in clients first. We believe in commitment to excellence for ourselves. We believe in leveraging technology. We believe in relentless improvement. So we're going to be better in 6 months than we are today. We believe in staying classy in terms of our marketing and our branding. And we believe in tireless authenticity. No offense to any of you that wear a tie for court or otherwise, but I personally don't like ties and I don't need to wear them. So I said, I'm starting my firm. I'm going to be 100% authentic. And that means that I'm not going to wear a tie. So those are our firm's values. And you can see some of these other terms here. There is no judgment on this at all. But hopefully you can pull some terms out. If you see something here that you really like, write it down. If you come up with something else that really resonates with you, write that down too. Okay. I'm going to change over to another slide, but I want to give you guys about 5 seconds to go ahead and just process and kind of read through and reflect on all of this information. All right, we are going to move to another slide now. Okay, so this is the first exercise of the day, your top 5 values. So your goal here is to write down the top 5 values that you have for your firm. It can certainly be more. Don't worry about that. But come up with at least 5. It could be based on the prior list, or it could be based on what inspires you and what speaks to you. But write down those 5 at least. They should be 1 to 2 words, or maybe some catchy phrase. I like the catchy phrase approach for my business, but It's up to you what really works for you. And these values, again, they're going to drive everything in your firm. They're going to drive the kind of marketing and branding that you want to do. They're going to drive the kinds of clients that you attract. And they're certainly going to set the tone for how your firm operates on a daily basis, whether you have employees or whether you work with contractors or vendors. The culture of your firm is going to determine, the values of your firm are going to determine the culture, and that's going to determine how you interact with all those vendors, partners, and employees. So top 5 values, again, if you're struggling with those, go ahead and type, into the chat box or into the Q&A, and we'll get those answered. For those of you that, again, that know what your values are, just make sure that you're living them, okay? Sometimes the values we write down are not the values that the firm ends up living. And it's important to be honest about that. And for those of you who may not think that your firm has values, well, if you're on this call, it does, okay? You may just not know what they are. And so try to maybe identify that. I'll give you guys another 10 seconds, and then we are going to move on to the next piece. Okay, I'm assuming now that everyone has at least their 5 values. If you're struggling with some aspect of that, please type it in the chat box or ask a question, and we will try and get those answered. I'm not seeing anything coming through yet, so we are going to go ahead and continue on. So let's move on to the vision that you have at your firm. So vision, what is vision? I keep hearing, maybe it's a mission statement or a vision statement or a vision board, or what are we talking about when we talk about vision? Well, really the way I look at vision and the way my clients look at it is it's a destination that they have for their firm. It's when their practice is fully realized, when they can kick their feet up on the desk and say, you know what, I have the perfect practice. That is their vision for their law firm. And of course, the best way to end up with that perfect practice, is to figure out what that perfect practice actually is. Because once you figure out what that is and you write it down and you say, yeah, you know what, if I had this, I would be on cloud 9. Then what you can do is you can make the changes that are going to move your firm in that direction. If you don't have that vision really clearly identified, the changes you make may move you in a different direction. And that's where a lot of the frustration comes in, because change is really hard. Change is not easy. It's not easy for anyone, and it's especially difficult for really, really busy attorneys. So change is hard. Your vision that you have for your firm gives you the motivation and the stamina to make those changes, because now you're not just making changes for change's sake. Now you're making changes because you're building the practice that you want. You're being really intentional about taking your firm from where it is now to where you want it to be. And as it turns out, that vision is super important to a strategic plan, because once you have a vision, your strategy is how you achieve your vision. All right, so we're going to get into that, but I want to take this question here real quick. So Jeff's question here is, how do you differentiate between core and ancillary or secondary values? Great question, Jeff. And so that's really up to the law firm. I typically try to keep it around 5 or so, and then the other ones are going to be ancillary. And there's a process we go through where we really ask some tough questions and get them to make that identification. But I've had clients who are adamant that, nope, we've got 10 values in our firm, and these are the ones that we have. And for me, that's okay. As long as they live those values, I'm not so concerned about whether they're core or ancillary or how to differentiate it. An exception would be if they have 20 or 30 or 40. That to me just shows that they don't understand what their values really are, because values are things that represent the firm. And when you add in that many values, it's actually confusing the situation. It's not adding any clarity around that. So keeping it to me around 5 adds a lot of clarity, is very impactful. maybe 5 to 10, but probably no more than that, whether they're core or ancillary. So I hope that answered your question. All right, let's bounce back in now to setting the vision that you have for your firm. So what's coming up next, there's going to be some prompts, and I want you to write down your answers to these questions, okay? This is going to help you identify and define what that perfect practice is that you're trying to build, okay? And if you think you know already, terrific, but just be open to answering those questions as you see fit, because you might be surprised. Here we go. So when you define your perfect practice, I've identified 6 different elements of a perfect practice. Now, there are certainly more than this, and you should feel free to add more, but this is, pretty good for an introductory session. So what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to identify for each of these different elements what you want, and it's totally okay to be selfish, what you want, and then where you're currently at. So in some cases, and we'll take the first one, income. So income is the income that you make. What you want for income, maybe that's the same as what your current income is. So you're already making the income that you want. Terrific. That's awesome. You've definitely achieved your perfect practice in terms of income. Now let's move on to reputation. You're standing in the legal community. You're standing in your community. How do you want to be recognized? How do you want to be known? Do you want to be known in your city, in your county, in your state, nationally? What reputation would you like to have? And there is no judgment here. So bigger is not necessarily better. I want to make that really clear. Everyone's different. And so bigger is not necessarily better. What's important is what matters to you. So what reputation do you want? And then if you were to assess your reputation, what do you currently have as far as your reputation goes? The third one is work-life balance. Work-life harmony is what I like to call it, but work-life. So in terms of the amount of hours you work and how you feel at the end of the day and the amount of time you have on weekends and evenings, how you engage with your family and your friends, how you show up to work, all of those things are part of work-life. So what do you want that to be? And then where are you currently at? The third one is vacation. This is something I really enjoy. Very important to me to take time off because I went so many years without doing it. When I was working in corporate, I worked for about 7 years without taking time off. And I actually had, my wife and I had 2 kids during that time, and I didn't take any real vacation. So what that meant was when we were in the hospital, I was on my computer because we had Wi-Fi. Then when we brought, our son and our daughter home, I took a week off, but really I was working during that time, most of the time. And so for me, when I started my own practice, it was very important for me to be able to take lots of time off. And in fact, last year I was very excited. I worked an 11-month year, which means I took the month of July off completely. It took me 2 years to get my practice structured to the point where I could do that. But that's something that my clients really enjoy too, is figuring out how do we take more time off. So for vacation, again, what do you want? And then where are you at currently? How many weeks or days or hours of vacation do you take a year? And if vacation isn't important to you, again, totally fine. Size. So for some people, they want to have a really small firm. Other people want to have a really big firm. It's really important to them for their firm to be a certain size. So if that's the case for you, what size firm do you want to have? And then where are you at currently? And then the 6th element of that are practice areas. So oftentimes, attorneys want to add practice areas, or they want to drop certain practice areas in favor of other ones, or they want to add other attorneys to their firm so they can branch out and practice other practice areas really well. So again, what practice areas do you want to have for your firm? And how does that match up with the practice areas that your firm currently has within it today? And that question holds true whether it's a soloist firm or a small law firm or a growing firm. It's really important that coming out of this exercise, you have some really clear sense for where your practice is and the practice you want to have in terms of these 6 elements. So if you have any questions about any of these, just please type it in the chat box now, or if you're having difficulty or you're stuck, please let us know. We'll give you a few seconds to wrap that up, and then we're going to go ahead and move on if there aren't any questions. All right, let's go ahead and continue on. So that takes us to the unique value proposition or the unique selling proposition. So UVP or USP is something that sets you apart from your best competition. Your best competition. It's why clients choose to work with you. And your unique value proposition and knowing it is really critical because we want to leverage our unique value proposition as much as we can, particularly in our marketing efforts. The better we communicate our unique value proposition through our marketing, the more effective our marketing is going to be. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at this. The question we're trying to answer here is, why do clients choose you versus quality competition? Not the competition that doesn't know what they're doing and doesn't answer the phones, doesn't respond to emails. Not those folks, but the people that are quality, that you respect, that sometimes you lose clients to. It's not an accident that clients choose you. They choose you for a specific set of reasons. And what you have to do is discover what those reasons are. And so here are some specifics that you can look into, some elements that may help you define what your unique value proposition is. One is reputation. They might choose you partially or completely based on your reputation. They might choose you based on your style, right? They just like your personality, love your approach, love the way that you brand your firm. It speaks to them, it connects with them. And so they might choose you just based on that, or partially based on that. Third one, and this one is really powerful, is your professional and or your personal relationships. I know attorneys that are fantastic rainmakers that have built their book of business over the years by, coaching youth sports, and over time that network turned into clients, and it continues to produce for them today. So personal relationships can and do have a huge impact on why clients choose to work with you. The other is your professional relationships, whether it's relationships in the bar association or other networking relationships, or your status in the community and the relationships you've built there professionally. All of those relationships really help. It could even be from previous law firms that you've worked in or your current firms that result in potential clients heading to you. So professional and personal relationships, super important, and are usually a really big driver of why clients choose to work with you versus the competition. But it's not always that way. Sometimes geography has a big impact, right? If they want someone to represent them in court, geography is going to be potentially a big factor in doing that. For those of you that generate a lot of leads online, you know that geography is really important, and staking that out and having that is really key to generating those leads online. So geography may be key for you too. Your experience, so whether you're a certified specialist or whether you've been doing it for 20 years, or whether you've been doing it, in some of these areas, if you've been doing it for 10 years, you've been doing it for a very long time, in like areas of privacy and data security and things like that. So your experience and the kind of experience you have, in addition to the longevity. Or maybe you're just really good. Like when you operate in your area of genius, you're really talented at certain things as an attorney. You're a really talented litigator, a fantastic trial lawyer, or you're really talented at fashioning terrific estate plans for clients. And whatever it happens to be, sometimes you're just really talented and you're operating in your area of genius. And that's terrific. So I'd like to go ahead and ask for questions here in the chat. Why do clients choose to work with you versus your quality competition? This is an opportunity for you to boast a little bit. Why do clients choose to work with you versus your quality competition? Just go ahead and type that in the chat box now. I can hear people thinking. Yeah, it may be not easy for some of you. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. We're getting some really good answers coming through here now. So Maria says several things for her: reputation, personal style, approachability, geography, and professional organizations. Very cool. Yeah, it's oftentimes a combination. I had a client one time, an estate planning attorney, and we were trying to figure out what set her apart from her competition. And in the area geographically where she practiced, there were so many. And so what we ended up with is she was the only attorney in, I think, about a 10-mile area in her geography who was at a certain price point that was really attractive for her marketplace, that had her ethnic background, and that had 10 years experience. Like that was the box. That's what set her apart. And we marketed to those things, and her practice filled up. She built her perfect practice within 6 months. So yeah, sometimes it's multi-factor, like Maria said. Teresa is basically personal or professional referrals. Fantastic. Yeah, referrals are great. And that network is so powerful, isn't it? It really is. And once you know that, right, you know that personal and professional referrals are why clients choose you. Now you can focus your marketing efforts on those relationships. Patrick says, we treat them like family and show them their concerns are legitimate and important. That is wonderful, Patrick. And hopefully that's something that you do even before they become a client. Sharon says, personal relationships. Yep. Aaron, individual attention to clients, compassionate personal relationships, terrific. Relationship is number one, says Michael. Also reputation. Yep. Phyllis says, very personable. That's more of a style thing, right? Make connections with people and trustworthy, especially important for estate planning. Absolutely. Jennifer Taylor, Jennifer says, quality and efficiency of work, personal style and network. Yeah. Phyllis is not seeing anyone else's responses. Don't worry, Phyllis. I'm reading those out to you as we speak. We have another one here. After they meet me, they must think I'm a good person and knowledgeable, and they believe me when I tell them I will try as hard as I can for them. Yeah, so you're very credible, which is great. And that speaks a lot to your style and the way that you conduct yourself. Yeah, no worries, Phyllis. That's great. Terrific. So that's why clients choose to work with you. And if you're not sure about that, there's a pretty simple thing you can do. You can talk to a couple of recent clients and just ask them, hey, this might sound like a silly question, but why did you choose me over other attorneys? And hear what they say. If you talk to 4 or 5 of them and ask them that question, their answers might actually surprise you. All right, so let's go ahead and do a quick recap. We've just now talked about the UVP. Let's go back now to the vision that you have for your practice. Hopefully it's had some time to percolate and you've had some time to ruminate on it as we've gone through this. As you're thinking about it now, what is the number one thing that you want to focus on in terms of moving your practice to build that perfect practice? What's the one thing you want to improve, change, or transform? Let's go ahead and type it into the chat box now. As far as the vision you have for your practice, what's the one thing, if you had to pick one, what's that one thing that you really want to see progress on, that you really want to make changes in? All right, we've got size. Cool. Michael, yeah, size. Size in terms of revenue, size in terms of number of offices, size in terms of number of attorneys. What did you mean by that, Michael? Just type that in. Patrick says income. Yeah, hear that a lot. Aaron, professional relationship expansion. Love it. Carissa says organization and efficiency. Yep, absolutely. Hiring helpers. Awesome. Income again. Yeah. And so now the easy question for you to think about, well, it's not necessarily easy to think about, but the next question for you to think about is, if that's the number one thing, what is the first step that you can take towards just moving yourself closer in that direction? Is it just focusing on some things, maybe carving out some time to finish off your strategic plan? Is it contacting someone or leveraging some resources for help. Or maybe you've got a plan. You just need to keep executing it. That might be the case too. Mick Hawk says income and efficiency. Yes. I love where you're going with this, Michael. So Michael says size is important for staff and for another attorney, because when you bring on staff, it leads to revenue, vacation, etc. Yes, absolutely. Having that staff makes it so much easier to have work-life balance, to take time off, and to bring in revenue. And the fun part about this is you can oftentimes be making revenue for your firm while you're on vacation, because another attorney or a paralegal or a contract attorney is doing client work while you're away. And that feels great to come back from vacation and to see that your account balance has actually gone up instead of down. It's kind of a neat feeling. But I also want to point out that there are ways for solo attorneys to take vacation too. And I would challenge anyone that wants to do it to try and think about what an 11-month year looks like, where you work 11 months out of the year and you take 1 month off. If you really think about how you can do that, you'd be surprised at some of the answers you come up with. It's possible even for solo attorneys. Terrific. So now let's go back one more. So we talked about why clients choose you versus the competition. That's your unique value proposition. We've talked about the vision you have for your law firm. And now we're going to go one step back further and let's talk about the values that you have for your law firm. What's the number one value that you have for your firm? If you had to pick one, what's most important to you? And there is no judgment here, so go ahead and type it into the chat box. And while you guys are doing that, I go through this exercise quite a bit with clients, and one of my clients said kind of sheepishly, he said, "Is it okay if it's making money?" And I said, absolutely, it's okay. That's totally fine, as long as you live that value. And he actually wasn't living it at the time, so he had to make a lot of changes. All right, we've seen some great answers here. Reputation, integrity, responsive, integrity. Yeah, integrity is usually what comes up first, or most often when I ask that question, usually followed up by something around customer service, like responsiveness, like reputation, things like that. And Aaron says excellence. Yes, excellence is super important. The thing is, as attorneys, you're all trusted advisors. You're trusted advisors to your clients. Your clients trust you, and they trust you before they hire you. If they didn't trust you, they wouldn't hire you. And so these things that you're talking about, integrity, responsiveness, reputation, excellence, these are all hallmarks of trusted advisors. And the consequences of that in your firm, so if you have that presentation, embedding that in your firm, so your whole firm is responsive, your whole firm has integrity, your whole firm practices excellence, that is where the power comes in. And then you can take those things as well and put them into your marketing. Your marketing should scream integrity, responsive, excellent, great reputation, right? That's what you want on your website. That's what you want on your elevator pitch. That's what you want other people to be saying about you. And so that's how values impact hiring, right? And culture. They also impact marketing, and that's going to influence the kinds of clients you attract. Because the clients you bring in are going to come in based on appreciating your values. They're going to appreciate the values, and they're going to trust you, and then they're going to hire you. All right, so we have covered a lot today. This has been kind of a whirlwind exercise. And strategic planning takes a bit longer than the time we have today, right? It's not unusual. Even when we go through a one-page strategic plan, it could take a couple of hours, and that's one-on-one. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to get more here in a moment, and then we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions that you all have. So I'm going to be offering to you all a strategic planning toolkit. It's free. It includes the one-page strategic plan form and in a fillable PDF. So what's nice about that is you can use it year after year. I'll also include a link to a video tutorial where I take you through the entire strategic plan from what we've just covered, as well as the other stuff, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, goals, and metrics that we did not have a chance to get to today. And then I'm also going to be providing you with values worksheets. These are a set of 3 worksheets that my clients step through to figure out, what the values are for their law firm. So if you want that, you can go ahead and email me at the address you see there, or you can ping me on LinkedIn, and I'll get that to you. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and open it up to questions that you have. Just go ahead and type that in the chat box, and Yanni will read those out.
We've got one question from Alex about reposting the whole one page here. I can answer that one. We'll actually send you a link to the whole deck with all those materials right after this in an email.
Awesome.
Okay, we've got one from Maria. It says, tell us more about working 11 months and taking 1 month off.
Oh yeah, that's great. I could talk a lot about it, but this was kind of a thought experiment that I did because I coach attorneys. I wanted to make sure that I practiced what I preached. And so I created this tool that I was teaching attorneys called the Paradise Planner, and it teaches them how to take time off. And really what it does is it teaches them how to do that and then how to structure their firm so they can actually take the time off. And so we were using it to take, another 2 weeks off, another 3 weeks off, because it's based on what I was doing to take more time off in my practice. And I said, I really want to see how good this tool is. I'm going to push the envelope. So, kind of practicing what I preach, what is my perfect practice? And my perfect practice would be, I want to work 11 months out of the year. I don't want to work 10 months or 6 months. I love working. I love what I do. I want to do it hard for 11 months. And I would love to take a month off. I hadn't taken a month off since high school. And so, the idea of taking a month off seemed unreal to me at the time. And so I said, okay, well, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna use my tools and see if I can make this happen. And there were a couple of challenges I had. One was I coach my clients. I meet them multiple times a month. I have potential clients that I'm meeting with on a weekly and monthly basis. And I have billings and things like that need to get out with my supervision. And so how do I take all of those things and kind of set it up so I can basically skip a month? And what I did basically, and these are things that you can do too. As a coach, I found another business coach who I trusted, and I said, look, I'll pay you because my clients are paying me. Can you coach them while I'm out? And then for potential clients, I basically put that on hold. And then for billing, I had it set up so it was relatively automated. I made a couple of other changes and was able to take the month of July off last year, planning on taking it off this year, but then COVID hit, but we'll get back to it in 2021. Thank you, Maria. I appreciate the question.
Looks like we've got another one from Michael. He asks, how do you avoid a vision statement that sounds like the big company puffery or unrealistic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I hate those. My God, like the boilerplate vision statement or mission statement that you see on a plaque somewhere that everyone ignores and no one understands. Yeah, I don't do vision statements, Michael. The only vision I have is what's in the one-page strategic plan, and that's a description. That's all it is. It's not a vision statement. You can't put it on a board. I mean, if you wanted to work on it, you could, but that is really for the business owner, so for the attorney, to use as a guiding light as they're building their practice. I'm not a big fan of vision statements. I don't think, there are very few organizations, I'll put it that way, there's very few organizations that have a truly compelling vision statement that their employees know, that's a clarion call for the entire organization. That's pretty tough to do. One organization I think that does that pretty well, I suspect, I don't know this for sure, but based on a lot of their leadership stuff, is the Navy SEALs, right? And I'm pretty sure that whatever they have, it's not going to be big company puffery or being unrealistic. But I prefer just having that description. For me, that's a lot more useful, a lot more practical. Great question. Thank you, Michael.
And I actually have my own question.
Yeah.
So as your firm evolves, how often would you recommend updating this plan or vision? And should you treat it like a living document?
Yes, great question. So yes, absolutely, and sort of.
Mhm,
Um, there are some things on it that are going to change more often than not. There's some things on it that probably aren't going to change very much.
mhm,
So if you find yourself changing the strategic plan every month or even every quarter, it may be time to really think about, okay, how much thought has been put into the plan? Maybe some more thought is required. It shouldn't really change more than once a year.
mhm,
Um, you know, that being said, things happen. So some of the things that I've seen change, sometimes, for example, are revenue goals. Things happened and the revenue goal needs to be increased or it needs to be decreased based on what circumstances occurred. Um, the other thing that I've seen happen is when clients are making progress, the strengths don't change. The strengths are still the strengths, but the weaknesses change because they retire some of those weaknesses, no longer weaknesses anymore. So we can take those off the board. Sometimes they seize an opportunity or a new one comes by, so they make a change to the opportunity section. And sometimes a new threat presents itself. But typically the areas that don't change are going to be the vision for the firm, the values that the firm has, the unique value proposition, and the strengths. Those things are pretty much static, even year over year over year. The stuff underneath is what changes more frequently, but even that shouldn't be changing all that often. Great question. Thank you.
and looks like, oh, a couple questions. Michael was wondering if you could clarify how to translate your values in communicating them to staff and clients without the puffery tone to it. And then we've got one from W. Worth who says, how are your attorney clients communicating with and landing potential clients now that we are trying to sequester ourselves?
Cool. Okay, yeah, I see the questions here too. Thank you. All right, well, let's grab Michael's question first. So, um, it's really simple, Michael. I share in my clients share the vision of what they're trying to build with their staff and with the attorneys. Um, if there's some elements of that that are maybe self-serving or could be interpreted as self-serving, for example, an income statement, right, a phrase that they want to have, they might take that out and replace it with revenue. So it's encompasses the whole firm. But speaking from the heart and being authentic about the kind of firm you want to have, that's why people come to work with you. It's the kind of, they're buying into your vision. And the irony is that they come in and they work, but they don't have a good idea what that vision is. So just laying it out kind of as it is, here's the vision of the firm. The values are already going to have been discussed because that's what comes up during the interview process. And again, being really clear about these are the values that our firm believes in, and these are the values that everyone that works here needs to have. If you don't have those values, it's totally fine, but we're not the right fit for you. And this is the vision that we're trying to build with our firm. And again, if this is not a vision that that really excites you, that really drives you, it's okay. But this is probably not the right firm for you. And then reinforcing that vision at every opportunity several times a year um, keeps people energized and engaged. They love to be a part of something greater than themselves. They love to be building towards something. And so just sharing it as is, maybe making some tweaks so it's more firm appropriate and less about you, um, is really powerful. It may seem, Michael's, my biggest concern when that happens, and the concern I've heard from clients is they go, yeah, but isn't that a little cheesy? Like, I feel like, I'm being a little overly dramatic or a little, rainbows and unicorns. And it is sometimes a little like that, but, that's how you inspire people. You inspire people by giving them something to pursue, by giving them something bigger than themselves that's really compelling. And then as an organization, you go out there and get it, and it's a ton of fun. Okay, so the second question here. Yes, how are attorney clients communicating with and landing potential clients now that we're trying to sequester ourselves? Yeah, so it's, face-to-face meetings in person are, still happening, or they're happening more now than they were before, depending on where you live. But a lot of these meetings are done via Zoom, and a lot of these are done via phone call. That's really, kind of what I've seen, whether you're using Zoom or Blue Jeans or something else. That's still there. And perhaps more importantly than the client communication, and that's really important, don't get me wrong, but if we're talking about landing potential clients, we should talk a little bit about generating, you know, potential clients. And a lot of that has unfortunately fallen by the wayside. And there was a talk I did with the CEB, just, I think was it last week, Yanni, or the week before? I don't
Yeah.
know. I've got COVID brain. I don't know.
I think it was.
Um, but the talk was on business development during the pandemic, because there have been some things that have changed significantly. And there have been some things that have not changed and are continuing to be important. And so really focusing on the relationships that are productive for you, getting in touch with your referral sources, staying in touch with your community, whether it's phone, um, Zoom meetings, texts, handwritten notes, whatever it happens to be, but keeping those relationships alive. Um, and then the last thing I'll add there, so we've talked about, generating potential referrals, landing actual clients. And the third thing is communicating with clients, which you mentioned. Over communicating now more than ever. There's two reasons for that. One is clients love to hear from you now. Like, they're desperate to talk to people. So it's great when they hear from their trusted advisor. So that's one thing. And the other is that there's just a lot of uncertainty and anxiety right now. And so over communicating a little bit in this day and age, particularly because face-to-face is not an option for a lot of people, is super important. So that may mean, instead of sending an email, send the email, but then pick up the phone, right, and give them a phone call, that kind of thing. So taking the customer service you're delivering already, which is really good, and then maybe just taking that one notch higher.